So, hey everyone, I have a very, very cool guest this week, Mr. Eric Wilbers, and you are with Phillips and Donovan Architects. How are you today?
Hi, doing well, Shelby.
I'm so glad that you were able to talk with me. I know that you are extremely, extremely busy right now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's the building industry for the last, especially year and a half, has been just booming. I think COVID had a lot of negative effects on a lot of industries, but I think the building industry is oddly prospered because of it all.
Well, yeah, nobody can buy a house. There's no inventory. So now they're just staying in their own and they're building.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of that we've seen over the last year and a half or so. Is I think a lot of people are especially for the first 3 months of the COVID lockdown, were stuck in their houses, and they spent a lot more time looking at their houses than they did before that, and they
Right.
realized that there was a lot of things that they like, hey, maybe when this all kind of blows over, we're going to call an architect and get some of this fixed. And or they realize that they're going to be spending a lot more time because they're working from home now, or they're having their grandparents or parents move in with them. And so there's a lot of people that were in that boat where they liked where they lived, but the house that they had just wasn't really up to like modern amenities. It didn't have 2020 or 21 styles of living. It was still kind of set in the 90s. The kitchens were too small, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of people that went through that transformation the last year and a half or so.
So contractors must be like bugging you saying, hey, we're ready to do work. Or because, let me ask you, is it because they're so far behind, have some leeway with those architectural plans that you're making?
I'm sorry, once more, you broke up a little bit there.
So a contractor is so backed up, but they can't do their work until we have your prints.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
is there rush on your end, and then contractor makes them wait, or do you have a little bit of leeway now because of the fact that contractors are so far behind?
Gotcha. Yeah. A little bit of both. I think, our industry is always hurry up to slow down. It's always an industry that you want to get things done as quick as possible, and then the drawings sit on somebody's desk for a while. But I think, the last year and a half, there's been, as fast as we can give drawings to contractors, they're taking them and building them as best they can. So it's kind of been a process of, as quickly as we can get projects done, the better in a lot of ways.
Okay, so let's real quickly, before I start asking you questions about what you're seeing with architecture, why don't you tell us a little bit about Philip and Donovan Architects?
Yeah.
How long they've been around, all that kind of stuff.
So we were founded in 1976. We were George J. Donovan and Associates then. And then in 2013, George's son-in-law, Joe Phillips, they were both principals since the 90s, I believe. Joe took over sole principal of the firm, and we were renamed to Phillips and Donovan Architects. George has since passed away, but Joe remains as our sole principal at the firm. And Joe's been with us since the 90s, mid 80s, I believe. And we do a broad scope of work. We do a lot of residential work, is primarily what I do. Everything from brand new 6,000 square foot houses all the way down to small little kitchen additions and everything in between. We do an awful lot of municipal work. We do a lot of township buildings, police stations, fire companies, that sort of thing, all through Bucks, Montgomery, Lehigh County, and even into New Jersey a little bit. And we do a lot of commercial work too, office buildings, doctors' offices, rentals, that sort of thing, tenant fit outs.
Okay.
I think is one of the things back in the '08 recession that really helped us is we had such a broad diversity of projects that we were capable of doing and doing well, that we're able to stay afloat versus some of the architectural firms that specialize in just doing schools or just doing a specific type of house or whatever the case may be. So.
All right. So how many architects work at your firm? How many do you guys have total?
Yeah, so we have two different offices. We have our Bedminster office, which is where I'm located out of. And there's about eight of us at this office. And then there's three more up in our Bethlehem office.
Okay, so I decide that I want to build an addition on my house, and I really don't know what it is that I'm looking to do. So is my first step to am I calling you, the architect, to help draw up plans, or am I calling my contractor, and then my contractor is going to be coming to you with what they see the plans to be?
Right. I think generally speaking, the best thing to do is to call an architect first. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, part of our work is to do a zoning analysis to see what sort of opportunities your site has. where your building setbacks, how much impervious and building coverage do you have for your lot? Is what the vision in your head, is that even a capable thing to be built on the site with the given restrictions by the township and the zoning and that sort of thing? And so we go through that process as one of the very first things we do, just to make sure that your dream is actually something that can be built and done. And then ultimately we work through the different design processes to design and document the house addition or whatever it is that you're looking to do. And then the earlier we can bring in a contractor in that process, the better. Oftentimes they have a little bit better pulse on what the market is for cost of materials, cost of construction, that sort of thing. And we work kind of as a tandem unit there to appraise our clients as to the best design, but then also something that fits their budget too, because that's ultimately something that's important, is making sure that they can afford what they're looking to build. And it's a cost-effective construction too. So generally speaking, I would advise people to come to an architect first, and then we have a lot of professionals that we work with on a daily basis: civil engineers, structural engineers, general contractors, that we can help link them up with at the appropriate times during the process.
So when you draw your prints up and you have everything done, does it go then to that structural engineer next? Like, do you have a process of who it goes to go through the channel before it goes to the contractor?
Yeah, so during the process, we bring in structural engineers, civil engineers, that sort of thing, to because their area of expertise is just an extension of what we know how to do. And then they help us with finalizing the documentation of what's needed structurally, and then some more of the more civil, like a lot of townships require civil documentation for home additions and brand new homes and that sort of thing. And then ultimately, once all of those expertises are brought together and finalized into a construction document set, that's given to the general contractor to submit for permits and ultimately for construction.
Now, do you find that you get called back into a project after you've initiated and you've given that contractor the prints, or do you pretty much you're done, or do you have interaction with them throughout the process?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the scope of services that the client wants. A lot of clients don't necessarily want us to be out on the site all the time doing construction administration, but that's part of the services that we do offer. Some clients like to have us come out partway through just to make sure that everything is like kind of a more limited construction administration. Some clients we don't hear from at all as soon as we give the drawings. That's not completely uncommon either. At that point, it's often more of a relationship with the general contractor, because they're going to be on the site every day. They're going to be helping with some more of like the particulars of the house as the construction goes through. But depending on the scope of services, that we're involved with everything down to material selection and like the finest of details. And so it kind of depends on the scope of what the client wants, and we try to cater our services to fit that.
So tell me, what's one of the coolest projects that you've done?
Yeah, so one of the coolest projects that we've done is actually right down the road from our Bedminster office. We did a complete revitalization of a 1700s Amish-made barn.
Oh,
We ended up, yeah, we ended up taking down all the heavy timbers. They were in like various states of being in good shape and not good shape, and restored those in whatever capacity was needed to bring them back up to kind of a good structural standard. Rebuilt the barn, the way the Amish did, really, with all the markings and everything. And then around that barn, we built, in that barn, I should say, really, we built a brand new home, entertaining space, a garage, and essentially made like a brand new house out of an existing Bucks County barn. So it was a very fun project, very detail oriented. We had to make sure we place the windows properly because of all the heavy timbers that are going through. You didn't want to timber right through your window. And then also just trying to keep kind of a modern standard of living that was tied into this really kind of this very antique structure, if you will.
right.
It was a unique challenge, and we don't get to do a ton of projects like that, but whenever we do it, they're always the fun ones.
I was going to ask you, have you done other historical, like, is there a different certification that you need to maintain a historical property?
Yes and no. We do a lot of work in the historic district of Doylestown or Newtown. We've done a couple of projects in the last few years, and there is different design standards and different processes that you have to go through in order to build an addition or a brand new house in those districts. Involves going before the architectural hearing board, and submitting drawings that are up to the standards of that that historic board and going through a process with that. So if you live in one of those districts and you want to do an addition to your house, or you want to buy it, for you, Shelby, being a realtor, this is something that's really important for realtors to know too, is when you're selling a property in the historic district, it is important for your clients to know that there is a lot more that goes into restoring and building an addition, or if it's a historic property where it's a tear down building a new house than there would be if you weren't in the historic district. And that can be a kind of a complicated process. And so homeowners that are looking to buy a house in those districts should be aware that it's not a super simple process, and there is a little bit more red tape you have to go through.
Good information, good information. So Eric, before I ask you how you can be reached and all that stuff, is there something I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked you and you want us to know?
No, I don't think so. I think one of the most important things when you're working with an architect is to be able to vocalize and explain what your goals are. I think sometimes people bring us like pretty pictures and they don't really explain why they want it, or they have like a fairly kind of vague idea of what they want. Like being kind of clear, the clearer the client is to us as to what their goals and their needs are, the clearer we can be in presenting them with something that's functional and aesthetically pleasing and fits their needs. Just open communication is really important in our profession.
How long does it normally take you from the time that you meet with a client to obtain prints? I mean, is there a process where it's, you start and show them this much and then you go back and you continue to revise, or do you put your time and effort in and give it to them and then grab that eraser and, swap things out?
Yeah, so there's a multiple phase design process that we go through. And just to kind of keep it brief, so we initially meet with clients and we go through what's called a pre-design phase, where we get some of your initial ideas, some of your core concepts of what you want to accomplish. And based off of that discussion and some, if there's any sort of pictures or whatever that you bring to the table there, we design a schematic design set of drawings. That's a very kind of preliminary layout that shows how the different rooms are connected, some very conceptual elevations, kind of keeping things at a very basic level. And then we have a meeting based off of those drawings that we then take to a design refinement level, which is even more refinement about how the rooms are situated, different sorts of elevation options, window styles, colors, that sort of thing start to come into play a little bit more. And then ultimately, once you're happy with that set, then we move into a construction and permit set documentation, where we document everything that needs to be done for local municipalities to give you a building permit, and then ultimately for general contractors to be able to build it. So that's kind of like the 4-phase process, and each step along the way we get the design closer from that kernel of an idea to ultimately what you're going to be living in. So that's
Wow.
kind of the design process.
Very, very cool. So if someone is very frustrated that they can't buy a house right now, and they've decided that they are going to stay and live where they're at and they're going to build, how can they reach you guys?
So probably the best way to reach us is via phone. Do you want me to give the phone number? Or?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, we're 215-795-2400, and that's our Bedminster office. I don't know the Bethlehem office off the top of my head. You can find us online, phillipsanddonovan.com. We have a Facebook page and Instagram and all that as well, I believe.
You've got some beautiful, beautiful shots in the gallery of some of the work that you guys have done. Very, very impressive. So, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And guys, obviously, you know that the market is really crazy right now. And, there is a pressure to possibly stay at home because you just right now you can't buy, and the cost of materials and everything else. I'm sure people are slowly starting to go down a little bit, so maybe it will motivate them to build again.
Yeah. It hasn't slowed down since about June of last year. So it's been going pretty crazy, but that's good, and we certainly beats the alternative. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, guys. Be sure that if you want to learn more about all the different guests that I'm talking to, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to Shelby Showcase podcast, and you can hear about local vendors and so forth that are around in the area. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.